Major support for these broadcasts is provided by New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the Wyckoff Group, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, LLC, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, DDG Partners, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katsimatidis, Red Apple Group, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, and these friends.
They call it the Garden State, but most people know it as the place where the Jets and the Giants play. And then there are other people who know it because if you go there, you don't pay sales tax on clothing. So what's happening in the Garden State? What's happening in New Jersey? What's happening with residential? What's happening in general? So I've assembled 4 individuals to provide their insight on what's happening in the state of New Jersey. My guests today include Jeff Schatz, who is the Executive Vice President for Leasing and Marketing for SJP Properties. Eric Woodmont, who is the CEO at Woodmont Properties. Ron Bett, who is the Managing Partner at RBH Group. And last but not least, Anthony DiTommaso, who is the co-founder and co-CEO at Ivy Equities. So you've been busy in New Jersey. Tell me about, and it's interesting that you've been busy in Newark, and so have you been busy in Newark, and I've had shows on Newark. Tell me what you're doing in Newark and what's happening over there.
Newark is very exciting for us. We have joint ventured with Matrix Development to develop a 340,000 square foot corporate headquarters building, of which Panasonic is going to be leasing 10 out of the 12 floors in the building. It will be a green building. It'll be a spectacular addition to the Newark skyline. And with what we're doing, along with what Ron is doing, with some of the other projects planned in Newark, I think we're going to see a continual growth of the Newark marketplace.
Now, so you said 10 out of the 12. Who do you think the tenants will be on the 2 other floors?
When you consider the age of the buildings in Newark, the minimum age is 20 years. These are older buildings that don't necessarily serve the needs of today's tenants. And so we expect to see those tenants moving from those buildings over to our buildings as the opportunity allows for them.
In a minute, I'm going to ask why they don't move into his building somewhere else in other parts of New Jersey. And let's talk about you, Teachers Village. You know, I remember a number of years ago when you were much younger, Ron, that you were on my show and we were talking about the dream of Teachers Village. You didn't call it Teachers Village at that time. There was some development. So now you got Richard Meyer, you got the guy from Facebook, you got everybody over there for a groundbreaking. I mean, I'm sorry that I didn't get invited so I could get a helmet.
I wasn't in charge of the invitation list.
So tell me about what's happening in Teachers Village in Newark.
So, Teachers Village, as you talked about, was the first phase of a much larger plan of ours. We had assembled 40 parcels in the downtown core, and Teachers Village is the first phase, and it's under construction.
Explain to my audience what Teachers Village is.
Sure. It's 8 buildings. 6 buildings are residential rental apartments over retail.
How high?
No more than 6 stories, mostly 6 stories. There's one 4-story building. And that was intended because we really were going horizontally rather than vertically, because we're transforming in one broad stroke over 5 city blocks in the downtown core. So we really wanted to stretch each construction dollar as far as it could go. And it's 6 residential rental apartments, 6 buildings with residential rental apartments pre-marketed to all teachers of Newark, district schools, charter schools, and the independent schools over retail.
Not the colleges?
Not the colleges. It's focused on K through 8th and high school teachers. And
Will it be a lottery?
Well, we hope it's a lottery. But
No. Because in the affordable range in New York City, in order, when you get the opportunity to get an affordable apartment, which this sounds like that, you go through a lottery. The person has to earn. Are there earnings levels also, or?
It's not pegged to earning levels, but it will be a lottery. I mean, you have 205 residential apartments for what is a market of about 6,000 to 8,000 teachers. So we do believe it's going to be a lottery. It's going to be first come, first served. There'll be a vigorous pre-marketing effort.
Lottery is different. Lottery means, they have to follow. You're saying first in.
We'll follow similar procedures. We're not under any requirements to follow those procedures, but we'll follow similar procedures.
And what kind of rents are they going to pay?
So the studio apartments will be in the 700 range, 1 bedrooms about 1,100 range, and 2 bedrooms about 1,400 range. Again, these are buildings designed by Richard Meyer, newly ground up construction. And
what's on the ground floor?
So the ground floor is, every building has retail on the ground floor, and even if they're not on main streets, on side streets, we've activated those streets as well. And really the amenities will be on the ground in this sort of new community that'll rise sort of overnight.
Now, it brings a point, and we're going to get back to Newark over here, is that Eric has been very active in building, luxury homes, and also building rental homes. What's the rental homes that you're building in the state of New Jersey? How do they compare to the rents that he'd be talking about? I know you did something, a very great project in Morristown, but other parts, Bridgewater, you have another project, and so on.
Correct. We see the rental market in New Jersey as a very strong market, not just on the Gold Coast, which is really benefiting from the pricing out of units in Manhattan to people who want to live or working in Manhattan, but actually in the suburban markets, we're seeing a very strong demand where there are renters by choice. There are 2 different demographics. The young professionals that really can't afford or don't want to buy a home because they don't either have the income requirements in order to buy a home, or they don't have the down payment that's required, and they're not seeing the homes appreciate anymore. So the great American dream of owning a home and seeing that appreciate and that being your net worth has somewhat dissipated for this current generation. So those young professionals are renting by choice, but they really want to see luxury products. So we're providing condominium finishes, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and amenity-rich facilities. So we're building fitness centers, we're building wine bars, we're building home theaters in our clubhouse in order to create a clubhouse community feel for these suburban and transit-oriented.
And what are the rents? Because I'm trying to get a comparison to Ron's.
Sure. They range, I'd say, on the low side, about $1.50 a foot, which we relate to about $1,500 a month.
For a 2-bedroom?
For a 2-bedroom, up to as high as in Morristown now, we've broken $3 a foot, which is a $36 a yearly rent, which is over $4,000 a month for the rent.
Now, here's an interesting situation. Anthony, you have lots of office buildings, and then you're doing a retrofit. So let's talk about the retrofit in Princeton. And then I want to talk about the idea of taking some of these properties, because a number of the tenants have moved out of certain buildings. They stay in SJP properties. They stay over here.
Always.
Always over there. But, and the idea of perhaps retrofitting these buildings to be residential. But let's talk about how you see the market in general.
Well, I think Jeff made a good point before about the New Jersey office stock being old, 25 years. The last big building wave we had was in the late 80s. And I think during our last cycle that we had, A lot of these buildings were cleared through RTC. There was an overbuilding cycle. But these buildings came out, they were 10 years old. They were relatively new. They were still in good shape. And I think that the recovery was different then than it is now. Fast forward now, with 25, 30 years later, and you have some of these buildings that original stock. However, they occupy prime locations, but they just don't meet the standards that today's corporate tenants want. And I think what was unusual with our transaction to redevelop this site for Novo Nordisk's U.S. headquarters was that we competed with a new building. There was an alternate proposal on the table from another developer to build them a brand new building. And we made our case for this adaptive reuse of the building where we had a much better location. We had a much better campus environment for them, but we had an inferior product. So we said, well, we could renovate this thing entirely and bring it up to energy efficient LEED standards and deliver this thing at a cost that's at or below new buildings, and we could do it with greater certainty. And then you can enjoy the amenities of that location and that campus environment. So Novo Nordisk was one of the few to actually, make that leap and do that with us. So we were renovating 700,000 square foot former headquarters for Merrill Lynch.
Now, here's something interesting with regard. Novo is going to New Jersey, while I think Roche is leaving New Jersey. They're leaving Clifton, and a number of companies are coming to, as I alluded before, to the Alexandria Biotech campus in New York City. So New Jersey, which at one time, when you were, a number of these properties were built for pharma, telecommunications. Pharma has, shrunk inside. Telecommunications is no longer because of the uses over there. So buildings have taken different sources. Why are these companies leaving New Jersey to go to sometimes to Pennsylvania or even to New York City?
Well, it's a good observation, especially in all the industries. We have been at a net loss of jobs in New Jersey. I think one happens to be tax structure. I think that's we're now right there with New York as in California with our tax policies. So that's been one major advantage which we have lost over the years. I think we've also been losing to accessibility, transportation, communications, where it's easier to be in Charlotte, North Carolina today, where it's not maybe 10, 15 years ago. So I think that's been a big pull, and then a lot of competition. I mean, New York is really stepping its game up, trying to bring farmer.
There's a cup half full, though, to this story, in that I do think that this governor and this legislature is trying to change what were policies in the past that did not keep and attract businesses, and have figured out a way, in taking a very aggressive posture, to keep businesses in New Jersey. And they have a ship that they have to turn. It's a slow ship, but they're taking aggressive measures.
Okay, but I agree with you, but let's be realistic. I wrote an article a couple of months ago. Those urban tax credits that were provided in New Jersey, I mean, it's true that Panasonic wants to be in a luxury building that's being built by two great developers, SJP and Matrix over here. But look at the opportunities that they're getting for being over there in an urban neighborhood, or even being in Jersey City. These urban tax credits, these companies may never pay taxes. I mean, you were talking before that Prudential, who's a major tenant in New Jersey and in Newark, is thinking of starting a new corporate headquarters, which is going to help Newark in general, right? Now, you've gone and you've been building, I think, something for some farmer near the Princeton corridor, right?
Correct. But we need to revitalize our cities. Our cities are the drain of our tax dollars, our educational tax dollars, and our property tax dollars. And we need to have companies make investments in these cities. And if we need to entice them up front with those incentives in order to create jobs, in order to create stability, to reduce crime, to improve the school systems, that's a loss leader. And that's something that will make our state a great state.
And I agree wholeheartedly with it. We need a tax policy to retain tenants. And that is very important. If we did not have that, it would be
I brought this up specifically about Newark on a couple of shows that I've been running over the last couple of years. and I said to some very bright people who are involved with Newark, including Mark Burson and Frank Giatomasi and some others, New York City, when in the 1990s, when Lower Manhattan, no one wanted to be there, with these old 1920 buildings, great buildings, what happened was Giuliani said, I'm going to put in something called the 421G, and that was a 20-year tax abatement. Right. And you took buildings which really, you know, otherwise they want to come to good SJP or your properties or Ivy properties, and they took these buildings which were really obsolete, and they converted them to residential. And that's what helped Lower Manhattan. That's why on Wall Street, you don't have office buildings, you have residential buildings. You need to do this in parts of New Jersey.
We don't have the infrastructure in New Jersey in that we don't have high-rise buildings that have the foot plates that you need in order to convert to residential. So we have deeper buildings that you cannot convert to residential. They have to be rebuilt.
And,
right?
And in the urban cores, a lot of the buildings that are built, the relics of what the sort of the infrastructure that is left is very difficult to convert to residential, very different than the loft building product that you had here in downtown and Midtown and so forth. So it's very different.
So what do you do? Do you knock them down?
No, but essentially,
do you destroy them?
You assemble them. You assemble them. You retrofit them. Some of them need to be knocked down, and you have to rebuild.
I mean, we were talking before about, you know, the Mercedes-Benz headquarters that is going to be knocked down, and they're going to make it a lifetime lifestyle.
BMW.
BMW. I mean,
Yeah.
a quarter of a million square feet.
Well, yes, we're going to see retrofits and conversions, and some buildings will be knocked down. I mean, up in the Montvale area, we had done a full redevelopment of the Toys R Us headquarters. They had moved out. It was an antiquated building, and we took it down to the steel, very much like we're doing down in Princeton, and we ended up leasing that to Bar Pharmaceutical.
And you also sold that excess land.
I sold that excess land to him.
Let's back up.
And what did you do on it?
And
Built
we
homes.
built luxury.
killing.
We built luxury. We built luxury housing for the move down buyer.
But let's back up.
But that's exactly what we talked about before. People, especially, you know, the older guy like Schatz over here, who want to move, you know, from the big house to a smaller house over here, and you know, you should take some of these these office buildings that you don't need because there aren't that many cars, the data centers, and take them and build luxury housing.
It's the footprint problem. It goes back to the footprint
Yeah, but
problem.
let's back up a little bit to the sort of tax bill and what the urban transit up tax credits are doing. We have $1 billion, just about $1 billion under development in downtown Newark today, or about to break ground in the coming months. You've taken, you know, everyone likes to talk about downtown Newark as the four corners, the corner intersection of Broad and Market. But if you pan out a little bit, between Panasonic and the Prudential building that will be rising, you've taken out one corner, basically, of the four corners surrounding the four corners. So if you look at it, the four corners, there's four corners surrounding the four corners.
So I got two corners now.
So now the Marriott Hotel and Teachers Village on the other side, on another corner. A third corner, you have Dinosaur Barbecue and a bunch of stuff that the gentleman you talked about, Mark Burson, Samar Hanini, are developing buildings there, and there's other plans for that neighborhood right on the edge of the Prudential Center, is a third corner. We're talking about now in a next round of development here in parcels that we own, sort of a fourth corner. So just by the Urban Transit Up tax credit program, we have about $1 billion under construction. You have about another $1 billion in the pipeline. And what you'll see in the next 36 to 48 months there is that the four corners surrounding the four corners is going to create a boundary that's going to put pressure on the center core of the downtown, which is going to transform Newark and transform the state of New Jersey.
Are we going to see other places? I mean, look, what SJP, when they went to Hoboken, look, Pearson, they could have stayed in New York. Why'd they come to New Jersey?
Pearson was in New Jersey.
I know, but why they expand again in New Jersey?
Because of their employment base. Pearson saw the opportunities they have to retain and to attract young talent in the Hoboken marketplace. And they also had the access and the luxury of the path and other sources of transportation into New York. Pearson, yes, could have moved into New York. There was some pressure to move into New York, but they felt at the end of the day, this location with this lifestyle was very conducive for them. And
that's a very strong point about New Jersey. You talk about retaining what keeps New Jersey. I think there's something that's overlooked. It's the talented workforce that we have. You speak to executives at Novo Nordisk, and they say, well, why? You know, they could have moved anywhere they wanted to move, and they could have gotten tremendous tax incentives. We didn't take any tax incentives to redevelop their site. But they wanted to stay in Princeton because it has the highest concentration of graduate level and PhDs anywhere in the country. So the talent was way more important than whether they could get a tax abatement by moving across the river to either New York or going out to Pennsylvania, which was an option.
And that's why Newark has a great time horizon. Newark has a great talent base of educated people and people that are going through the school system, both undergraduate and graduate school, and then also professors. And that should be a real driver for what project like Rise.
And when you build out projects like this, when you build out projects, when you build out a downtown, when you build out the urban cores throughout New Jersey, you know, the human capital that these businesses are looking for.
But you bring up an interesting situation. It's urban. The urban core has to be, it's like what you did in Morristown. It's what they can do in Union. They can do in other places. If you're near a train, you take that train station, and they're trying to do it in Long Island right now. You take the train station and you build some residential over there, so there's the convenience to get into New York City if you have to.
The majority of our projects, Michael, are actually transit villages. We're doing one now. We were just appointed in Metuchen to do the redevelopment of their train station, which is 250 units, about 20,000 feet of retail space, and a 600-car garage. And that's a transit village on parking authority land. We are starting one actually in a few months in Cranford, which is at the train station. And in Red Bank, we just broke ground at the train station for another project. So that's the future.
I think you're going to see with firms like SJP, we're going to continue to develop, but I think our development is going to be in the urban centers. It's going to be New Brunswick. It's going to be in Newark. It's going to be in Hoboken. It's going to be in Jersey City. Yes, we will build in the suburbs as built-to-suit opportunities allow.
The suburban office, there's enough suburban
sprawl of offices.
Okay,
not going to happen.
That's not going to be the market. But then, I mean, look, SJP is also on the other side, is building these 2 towers, you know, in Fort Lee, in a neighborhood which is a great market, but nothing had been built for years in Fort Lee. And look at the convenience to Fort Lee, to the city over here. But where, you know, what about, you know, we're talking about residential, we're talking about urban. How's the rest of it? Is retail doing okay? I know it's not a specialty, but how is the retail?
Retail, in our transit village projects, the towns have always wanted to see us activate the street with retail. And that has been a problem, in that you have to minimize the amount of retail space so that it's digestible, because downtown retail is suffering, and it's continuing to suffer. So we are pushing back with communities.
You mean even in places like Short Hills and Millburn?
You could find some very select towns where it will thrive, but in most communities, the towns have to understand you have to minimize the amount of retail, do the retail in the right way so it activates the street and so that it blends in, not where you're building a new destination retail in the downtown.
What's happening in Jersey City today with regard to the office and the residential market? Anthony or anyone?
It's been one of the few bright spots in New Jersey. I mean, I think there are 4 areas of New Jersey, I'd say, that are really experiencing activity. You have Jersey City and Hoboken, you have Princeton, you have Morristown. It's really where, and they happen to be, except with the exception of Princeton, which has the attraction of the university, the other 3 happen to be transit-oriented.
And the waterfront of New Jersey, Jersey City, is really the 6th borough of Manhattan. It's going to continue to thrive as Manhattan continues to thrive. It's really not connected as much to New Jersey.
Another thing that's really good about Hoboken and certain other places is the light rail. The creativity of the light rail has helped New Jersey quite a bit.
Phenomenal.
What's going to add to the light rail is the extension of the light rail into the suburbs.
That's right.
Into Bergen County, into northern Bergen County, and even western Bergen County. That's going to have a profound impact on Jersey City and on the waterfront overall. But we see a lot of residential development.
15 years from today, that is going to be the story. Jeffrey is right.
What about light rail in places like Newark?
I mean, Newark has the transit.
No, they have the transit. I mean,
and
you know,
they have a great
thing
subway.
about
Newark has a subway.
Great subway, beautiful subway system.
People don't know about it.
And
they have a subway system.
Beautiful.
It's small, but it's
and they have a
there.
light rail that connects Broad Street Station and Penn Station. But you know, it's interesting that we're talking about Jersey City as sort of the bright spot. That was also a place where market.
It was a blighted area.
The market had to be created, and so that's what New Jersey is doing.
But you know what's interesting? I remember doing a show about 8 years ago on Jersey City, and I had the Barrys on the show, and I may have had Hoboken Brownstone, Danny Gans on the show, and what they had to do was that they had to build schools. That's right. They had to build schools for the new people to go in there. You have to have schools. If you're going to build Teachers Village, you're going to have schools over there for the community. You have to build schools in the urban, in the
But thus Mark Zuckerberg's $100 million investment into the school system in Newark.
Well, beyond that, even Teachers Village, I didn't finish the sentence at the beginning of the show, but 6 of the buildings are residential rentals over retail. The other 2 buildings are school buildings over retail, and we have 4 schools going in there. Top-notch schools like Team Academy, which is a KIPP charter school, Discovery Charter School, which performs at the top 10% in the state of New Jersey. It's been one of the early charter successes. We have the new sort of Great Oaks, which is going to be a great new promising school with great leadership and management coming out from the New York City public schools. And so you have to build, you do certainly have to build out that infrastructure. But the Teachers Village was really born not because we felt like we had to build the schools there, but because of the dialogue that's happening in education in Newark and the transformation in the schools that has occurred in the last decade.
Now is Perth Amboy going to have a situation? Are we going to have Bayonne? Are we going to see the opportunities in Bayonne and South Amboy?
Well, in South Amboy, we have a project in South Amboy that we're now finishing up our site work on, and it's 86 townhouses and a assisted living facility. And because it has the train station less than a mile away, it's considered a transit village, and that is where you're seeing more growth today. So, but they need to see in those communities newer product that has garages. Most of the product in South Amboy does not have garages. So you have to try to find how you're going to diversify new product, still have it fit into the community, and take advantage of the transportation.
And what about like New Brunswick? Is there any more new development taking place in New Brunswick?
New Brunswick, I think, has got a phenomenal future. New Brunswick is going to be the next Hoboken, with the infrastructure that's there, with the public transportation, with the colleges. New Brunswick is going
I will agree with you on certain, but the reason why Hoboken does well is that people can come in 20 minutes to Manhattan. Right. New Brunswick, you have a train, you have a bus, on exit 9, but you have the traffic and you have other situations. It will do well, but it's a
You have one great thing also in New Brunswick, in that you have a great public-private partnership with DevCo that's been able to drive redevelopment in the community. And that's what all of these cities need.
You still have J&J.
You have Johnson Martin. You have a lot of other infrastructure, but that private-public partnership that built parking garages and is able to finance projects is the key.
They just built a 150,000 square foot fitness facility in downtown New Brunswick. Part of the hospital, but again, part of that infrastructure that is going to support a future in New Brunswick.
30 minutes is not appropriate on this subject, so hopefully in a couple of months I'll have you all back. We'll talk about it. Might even do a specific show on Newark. I will, which I've done over the years. But I'd like to thank Jeff, Eric, Ron, and Anthony. See you next week.